The other day, I wanted to introduce one of my good friends to good old Canadian entertainment. So, little fact about me, I am a Canadian, hence my accent. I didn't know I had an accent until I moved to America, and then everyone said, "Oh, you have a Canadian accent, boy, it's awesome." It's my American accent. It was awful. But anyway, I decided to introduce my friend to some good old Canadian entertainment. And what did I pick as a show? I picked the legendary Kenny versus Spenny.
This is Kenny versus Spenny.
Now, a lot of people in America don't know what Kenny versus Spenny is. It's one of the few Canadian shows that managed to find its way below the border into America, because very few shows in Canada manage to do that. We're a small country with our own culture, and it's hard for Americans to consume the same culture as Canada, which I understand. But Kenny versus Spenny broke boundaries and managed to find its way into the US. I remember seeing Kenny and Spenny on Conan O'Brien.
What about this competition? The first one to use their arms loses. What was that?
Yeah, that kind of sucked. That was like a 4-day competition. But in the
You're not allowed to use your arms in any way.
Our arms were tied to our sides, and
Tell them what you did.
Spenny got a little pissed off because I actually tied a midget to me, and.
Now, that's not the only reason why I'm talking about Kenny versus Spenny. I recently found out that Kenny is actually promoting a show called Paldemics, which is about him trying to make amends with Spenny after they got into a little feud.
Kenny is an award-winning writer, producer, director, and beloved Canadian icon. Spenny is a broke David Schwimmer lookalike who used to be on Kenny's show. Catch them on Kenny's new talk show, Paldemic, coming soon to CBC Gem.
From the top, what is Kenny versus Spenny? So Kenny versus Spenny is basically two guys in an apartment, and each week they would do a different competition. Now the competitions can be something harmless, like first one to touch the floor loses, and it usually gets into some gross territory as well, like who can 69 the longest, or who can win a cockfight. I watch this show all the time with my brother, still 10 years after it's been canceled, almost 11 years since it's been canceled, and I still love this show. I think this is just quality Canadian entertainment. However, when I watch it with my American friends, they look at me with utter disgust. They say, "Paul, how can you like such lowbrow, cheap, crappy, crass humor?" Now, to be honest, look, the show is crass, yes. But I never really saw it as cheap humor. I wouldn't talk about Kenny versus Spenny like that. If you watch something like, I don't know, I reviewed Borat recently. Borat, the original, there is some crass humor there, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's cheap, and it doesn't really mean that Borat has nothing to say. I would say the same about Kenny versus Spenny. Is it a reality show? Yes. Is it crass? Absolutely. In the 69 episode, which is the one I watched the most recently, Kenny farts in the face of Spenny while doing the 69 position.
There we go. Now go. Grab on. Oh, fuck. Get it. Fuck.
And look, a lot of the humor, it is what it is. It's super crass. But I think there's more to the show than meets the eye. I'm going to compare it to another show, which might surprise some people, but this show reminds me a lot of the Three Stooges.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Obviously, the Three Stooges are not 69ing and farting in each other's faces. However, the reason why it reminds me so much of something like the Three Stooges is that, firstly, we remember the Three Stooges now as something that's praised. It wasn't always the case. the Three Stooges was originally seen as very lowbrow and cheap humor. But that aside, the reason why Kenny versus Spenny reminds me a lot of Three Stooges is that in the Three Stooges, you had three characters, each with their distinct personality. They play off of each other differently, and then you place them into these different scenarios. So I can't remember which is which, but you had the stupid one. They're all kind of stupid, but one was more stupid than the others. One was a little more short-tempered, and the other one is basically the leader of the three. And every time you'd see a Three Stooges skit, it would be them trying to learn how to bake, them being chimney sweepers, them doing this. So you're taking these three dynamics and putting them into different scenarios. That's what Kenny versus Spenny does, and that's why the humor, to me, in Kenny versus Spenny is so good. You have Kenny, who's a narcissistic slob, who loves getting under Spenny's skin, and meanwhile you have Spenny, who's a freaking ball of anxiety and such a neurotic personality. And that alone creates a very interesting character dynamic. But then you're placing them in these scenarios where, like, this week, Kenny and Spenny are going to fish versus one another. Or this week, they're going to have a cook-off, who can be the better cook. And that's why, to me, the humor of Kenny versus Spenny works. Now, in that era, which was the early to mid-2000s, crass humor was basically everywhere. Kenny versus Spenny was not the only one. There was, before that, in Canada, we had Tom Green, and even in America, you had stuff like Jackass and that kind of humor. And of course, there was the wave of R-rated comedies, stuff like American Pie and the Judd Apatow films like 40-Year-Old Virgin and Superbad. The reason why, to me, Kenny versus Spenny, I keep watching it over and over, and it's for that character dynamic. That is the centerpiece of the show that makes it work. I love seeing Kenny torment Spenny, and I like seeing Spenny go into a near existential crisis. I love seeing Spenny say, I'm going to quit the show, which eventually, unfortunately, he does. And that's the main reason why I still watch Kenny versus Spenny, even 10 years after it's been canceled, versus something like Jackass, which I do love Jackass. I think Jackass is very hilarious, but it lacks that kind of dynamic that makes me gravitate towards Kenny versus Spenny after all these years. If you haven't checked out my channel, I review things like, I did Possessor recently, and I'm thinking of ending things. And these are very artistic, very beautiful, high art films. And a lot of people, like even in my circle of friends, are like, how can you go from enjoying that to enjoying something like Kenny versus Spenny? To that I say, if you look at all of these big artistic filmmakers, look at someone like a Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson made The Master, which to me is one of the best films of that decade. It was an amazing film. And that aside, he made There Will Be Blood, Boogie Nights, Punch Drunk Love, all of these great films. But when asked in an interview what kind of comedies did he like, he said he loved Adam Sandler movies, which is generally regarded as cheap entertainment.
Open the window.
Why don't you open it, you...
If you look at someone like Spike Jonze, who made Her, and Being John Malkovich, two very critically well-respected films, Spike Jonze is heavily involved with Jackass, and he'll even show up in Jackass every now and again, dressed as the old hag.
In the second one, I was Gloria. I was this old lady, and she was very, very forward. Probably pretty promiscuous, and maybe even a slut.
Hey, you guys like to party? Hey, Cornell, you look handsome there.
You can enjoy that high entertainment, that artistic museum, mustache twirling entertainment, and you can also enjoy like something like Kenny versus Spenny, which is not trying to be high art. Kenny versus Spenny, it's not shooting for an Oscar. However, it sets out its goals and it achieves those goals perfectly. So without further ado, I'm going to be ranking the top 5 best Kenny versus Spenny episodes, keeping in mind what I said before, that I like the dynamic between the two characters the most. Also, don't get pissed if your favorite one doesn't make the cut. This is my personal opinion here. Number 5, I have the Who Can Eat More Meat episode. So in this episode, Spenny decides to eat nothing but turkey.
It's no secret, I will be eating turkey, my favorite meat.
Which to me is the stupidest idea ever. Turkey is dry and full of tryptophan, which is gonna knock you out. I just had Thanksgiving turkey recently. Bad idea, knocked me the fuck out. I don't know what Spenny was thinking there. And also just watching Kenny eat disgusting food.
What is that? Oh, I'm gonna start with the breast. I can't believe you're gonna eat that? That's disgusting.
And it fucking backfires on him. That was pretty good. So number 5, Who Can Eat Most Meat. Number 4, I have Who Can Imitate the Other One Better. Again, I like the dynamic between these two characters. So when they're tasked with having to mock one another, just watching Spenny break character and say, "Do I actually act like that? Do I act like that?" To me, it gets me every time. I fucking love that episode. And Kenny is obviously just trying to get under his skin. There's a part where he's like eating shit out of a toilet.
What the fuck are you doing? Oh my god! Kenny! Okay, this is fucking ridiculous. I have never in my life done anything like that. Ever.
In the climax of that episode, I've never seen Spenny lose his marbles that much. That was pretty crazy. He went like batshit crazy. He lost it. Number 3, classic episode. Whenever I'm introducing a friend to Kenny versus Spenny, I always recommend this as a segue. Who can blow the biggest fart? This episode, I love watching the two characters struggle to fart, and they're just like crouching on the floor, like trying to squeeze a fart out. They must have had so many hemorrhoids after that episode. That fart Kenny blew on the staircase. It's one for the history books, folks. I don't know who's in charge of this Guinness World Record, but I think it might be in this episode of Kenny versus Spenny.
Don't do that.
Number 2, who can piss off more people? This one also illustrates the two dynamics of these characters perfectly. Kenny just not giving a fuck, and Spenny being a bit more neurotic. Whenever Spenny pisses off someone, he'll give them an envelope written to whomever may concern on it. And meanwhile, Kenny is just having fun tormenting people. Just a fun episode to watch, and Kenny really gets creative in that episode and how he decides to piss off different people. Number 1, we're down to number 1, folks. This is my all-time favorite episode. It's a very controversial pick, I would say, because I go online and the ones people like tend to be the meat episode, the fart episode. That's great and all, but my fucking favorite episode, the one I can watch on a loop over and over again, is the fishing episode. Who can catch the bigger fish? Now, obviously, the premise behind that episode is not as flamboyant as who can blow the bigger fart or who can win a cockfight. But to me, that episode captures perfectly the dynamic between Kenny and Spenny. I love it when they're on the boat and they're basically arguing like children. And meanwhile, you have the person driving the boat, and he's just fucking had it with their shit. It's so fucking hilarious. And he starts giving Spenny shit, and he's like, if you can't grow up, you're gonna get off this boat. And Spenny's just like, well, he started it!
Tell me to calm down. Get down there, don't touch my fucking rod.
That's not what you said last night.
Okay, one more fucking rod joke, dick joke, stick joke, I'm gonna fucking lose it.
Guys, we're gonna have to go back if you don't settle down. This is getting
Talk to him!
It's an antidepressant. Like, you watch that show, you can be in the shittiest mood. Your cat could have died 30 minutes before. You watch that show, you can't help but laugh at how funny that episode is. I love the fishing episode of Kenny versus Spenny. It is quality entertainment. Beautiful. So that was my top 5 Kenny versus Spenny episodes. Please share down below what your favorite episodes are. I'm very curious to see what people think. Also, give me your general thoughts on the show, whether you like it or hate it, whether it holds up as well. I was watching one of the episodes and I noticed the humor didn't quite age well. Like, I'm putting myself in other people's shoes, but the humor is not very PC for today's generation. I personally don't have a problem with it. But let me know what you guys think about all that good stuff in the comment section down below.